Today we will be looking at two horrifying caving stories that went horribly wrong. The first one, in particular, is a tragic rave that happened inside a cave during the pandemic that was doomed from the start. The second one is equally baffling, where caving under the influence of alcohol leads to a tragedy. As always, viewer discretion is advised. It's a Saturday night in August 2020 in Oslo, Norway. And above the busy streets, people are heading home early. Bars close at midnight because of new coronavirus rules. Young people scroll through their phones, bored and restless. But deep beneath their feet, in a place forgotten by time, something incredible and incredibly dangerous is about to happen. 70 meters straight down, 229 feet, buried deeper than a 20-story building is tall, sits a massive concrete cave. This isn't any ordinary cave. It's a bunker built decades ago to protect people during dangerous times. Imagine a space bigger than 2 basketball courts, with thick concrete walls that could withstand almost anything. For years, it had been completely sealed off from the world above. But secrets have a way of surfacing. 3 weeks before that fateful night, a message began spreading through social media like wildfire. It wasn't posted on public pages or shared openly. Instead, it moved through private groups, whispered from friend to friend in the digital underground. The message was simple but thrilling. Rave Cave, Saturday night. Tell no one. The very name sent shivers of excitement through anyone who heard it. A rave in a cave? It sounded like something from a movie. Dangerous, exciting, and completely unforgettable. But this wasn't just any cave. This was a secret fortress hidden beneath one of Europe's most modern cities. And now, it was the venue for a birthday celebration rave party. The planners knew they were walking on thin ice, but they were making their first critical mistake. The country had strict rules about gatherings, no more than 20 people for private parties, and definitely not the hundreds they were hoping for. Instead of respecting these safety guidelines designed to protect public health, they crafted their plan like master spies, organizing a secret mission. The instructions were specific. Arrive in tiny groups. Start coming at 11 p.m. Don't all show up at once. Don't attract attention. Find the hidden entrance in the St. Hanshaugen area. And whatever you do, don't get caught. Saturday evening arrived with the kind of electric anticipation that makes your heart race. The first ones made their way through Oslo's quiet streets, following cryptic directions to a spot that looked completely ordinary from above. But appearances can be deceiving. Hidden beneath their feet was an entrance no bigger than a crawl space, just 1 square meter, like trying to squeeze through a small window. Wooden boards had been covering this secret doorway, but someone had already pried them away, creating a portal into another world. One by one, adventurous young people began disappearing into the earth. Picture them squeezing through that tiny opening, flashlights in hand, descending into complete darkness. A party needs power, and power needs generators. Here's where the organizers made their second deadly mistake. Diesel generators were wrestled through that narrow entrance, and these generators, they make noise. The organizers set them up in a room in the bunkers, and thinking they were being smart, they found an air shaft and sealed it up tight with plastic bags and duct tape. What they didn't understand was that diesel generators produce carbon monoxide, a deadly gas that needs proper ventilation to escape safely. By sealing the room, they were creating a poison chamber. No noise would escape to alert the world above, but neither would the invisible killer building up inside. It seemed like the perfect plan, but it was actually a death trap waiting to spring. As word spread and more people arrived, something magical began to happen. The cold, empty bunker transformed into a pulsing, living creature of lights and sound. Imagine walking into complete darkness and suddenly being hit by waves of color dancing across ancient concrete walls. This wasn't just any party. This was like stepping into a secret world that existed parallel to the ordinary life happening far above. Cars drove over their heads while below. Nearly 200 people danced in a space that had been designed to hide people from the dangers of war. Now, it was hiding them from the boredom of a world locked down by pandemic rules. The birthday celebration that had sparked this whole adventure became secondary to the pure magic of the moment. Teenagers and 20-somethings who had been stuck at home for months danced like they were celebrating not just a birthday, but their escape from the ordinary world. But even in paradise, there are whispers of trouble, if only people knew how to listen. The third major mistake was happening right in front of everyone, but nobody recognized the warning signs. Some of the sharper partygoers began to notice something strange. The oxygen levels inside the cave started dropping dangerously low. There was no proper ventilation system. The oxygen in the bunker was being consumed by the 200 people dancing. The air felt different, heavier, like breathing through a thick blanket. These were the early symptoms of carbon monoxide poisoning: dizziness, difficulty breathing, and the need for fresh air. But instead of recognizing these as danger signals that should have immediately cleared the party, people dismissed them as normal stuffiness. A few people started making trips to that tiny entrance, squeezing through the narrow opening to gasp fresh air under the stars above. One guy found himself climbing out repeatedly throughout the night. Each time he returned to the party, the air seemed thicker, more difficult to breathe. He told himself it was normal. Pack 200 people into any space and the air gets stuffy. This was the fourth mistake, ignoring his body's clear warning signals. What he didn't know was that his frequent trips outside were literally saving his life, while those who stayed inside were slowly being poisoned. Those plastic bags and duct tape that had seemed so clever were working too well. They weren't just keeping sound in, they were keeping something deadly in too. Carbon monoxide, an invisible killer that has no smell, no taste, no warning, was building up to lethal levels just meters away from the dancing crowd. The generators hummed away in their sealed prison, working harder and harder to power the lights and speakers. With every passing minute, they were producing more of the colorless gas that would soon turn paradise into a nightmare. Without any warning whatsoever, the world went black. The lights died, the music stopped. In an instant, 200 people went from dancing in colorful paradise to standing in complete, terrifying darkness. The silence was deafening after hours of pounding music. Confused voices began calling out in the blackness. Then someone found the generator room door and broke it open. Imagine opening a door and being hit by an invisible wall of death. That's exactly what happened. Carbon monoxide rushed out like a silent tsunami, instantly overwhelming anyone in its path. 3 young men standing near the door collapsed unconscious immediately, their bodies simply shutting down as the poison invaded their bloodstream. Other partygoers rushed to help, not understanding what they were running into. They were hit by waves of dizziness and nausea, their vision blurring as they fought to stay conscious. Some managed to grab their unconscious friends and drag them toward the entrance, but they had to keep running back out themselves, gasping for air, their heads spinning. But perhaps the biggest mistake of all was having only one exit. Picture the chaos. 200 people in complete darkness, many of them suddenly sick and confused, all trying to escape through an opening barely big enough for one person. The entrance that had seemed like such an adventure on the way in now became a terrifying bottleneck. In any emergency situation, you need multiple escape routes, but the organizers had chosen a location with just one tiny exit, turning what should have been a quick evacuation into a nightmare of people fainting, stumbling, desperate to reach the surface. Above ground, Oslo police officers were finishing their routine patrol when they spotted something that made them stop. Several young people were wandering the streets, looking lost and confused. They seemed disoriented, like they didn't know where they were or what had happened to them. When the officers approached, the truth came tumbling out. There was an emergency happening beneath their feet. More people were emerging from what looked like nowhere, many of them clearly in desperate need of medical help. At 3:46 a.m. on Sunday morning, the emergency call went out. Fire trucks, ambulances, and police cars raced through the empty streets towards St. Hanshaugen. What they found when they arrived was beyond anything they had trained for. The rescue workers descended into what had become a death trap. The carbon monoxide levels were so high, they could have killed a person in minutes. The oxygen level had dropped so low that it was barely enough to keep someone alive. They expected to find dozens of unconscious people scattered throughout the bunker. Miraculously, they found 7 unconscious victims, but most people had managed to escape before the gas could claim them. The fire department worked through the night, using powerful fans to pump fresh air into the bunker, slowly making it safe for rescue operations. 25 people were rushed to Oslo University Hospital, their lives hanging in the balance. 7 were unconscious, their bodies fighting the effects of carbon monoxide poisoning. 5 were in critical condition. so close to death that doctors called their survival a miracle. Even 2 police officers who had helped with the rescue were among those being treated, showing just how dangerous the situation had become, even after the party ended. Carbon monoxide is one of nature's most silent killers. It has no smell, no color, no taste, no way for humans to detect it until it's too late. It works by replacing oxygen in the bloodstream, slowly suffocating people from the inside while they remain completely unaware of what's happening. The doctors treating the victims were amazed that so many had survived. In the sealed bunker, with carbon monoxide levels many times higher than what's considered lethal, it should have been a mass casualty event that would have devastated families across Norway. As news of the incident spread across Norway and around the world, difficult questions began to surface. Questions that revealed even more mistakes in the chain of events. How had nearly 200 people managed to gather in a sealed bunker without authorities knowing? Most importantly, why had police tip-offs about the planned party been ignored? This was perhaps the most tragic mistake of all. The authorities had been warned. People had called the police about the planned illegal gathering, but somehow these warnings fell through the cracks. If the police had acted on these tips, 25 people wouldn't have ended up in the hospital fighting for their lives. 2 people were charged with trespassing and unauthorized use of the bunker, but many felt this was hardly enough for an event that had put so many lives at risk. The religious foundation that owned the bunker quickly distanced themselves from the incident, calling it a serious break-in and denying any responsibility. But perhaps the most haunting question was the simplest. What if someone hadn't broken down that generator room door when they did? What if the party had continued for another hour, or 2, or 3? The carbon monoxide would have eventually leaked out anyway, but by then it might have been too late for anyone to escape. In the days that followed, all 25 victims slowly recovered, though some would carry the effects with them for years to come. The 3 people who had been unconscious the longest were kept for observation, their brush with death serving as a reminder of how quickly celebration can turn to catastrophe. The bunker was sealed once again, but this time with the knowledge of what it had witnessed. The concrete walls that had once protected people from the dangers of war had nearly become their tomb in peacetime. The Rave cave had almost lived up to its name in the most horrible way imaginable. But if you thought that was reckless, wait until you hear about the next one, where alcohol, poor judgment, and a cave proved to be a deadly mix. The old mountain road between Gómez Farías and Altacima had seen countless travelers over the years. Winding through the El Cielo Biosphere Reserve in Tamaulipas, Mexico, it served as a lifeline connecting remote communities through some of the most beautiful and dangerous terrain in the region. The limestone landscape was riddled with natural caves and hidden pits, carved by centuries of water slowly dissolving the rock beneath. On the night of January 18th, 2004, Cornelio Garcia was making his way home along this familiar path. The 30-year-old had spent the evening at a party in Gómez Farías, celebrating with friends as people often did on weekend nights in their small community. The gathering had been lively, filled with music, laughter, and drinks shared among neighbors who had known each other for years. As midnight approached, Garcia decided it was time to head home to his family. He chose to take the old road rather than the longer paved route, a decision that many locals made regularly. The mountain path was rougher but more direct, cutting through the heart of the Biosphere Reserve. Garcia had walked this route dozens of times before, even in darkness, and knew its curves and landmarks well. The night was typical for the region in January, cool but not cold, with the sounds of the cloud forest creating a natural symphony around the narrow road. Garcia set off on foot, following the familiar path that wound upward through the mountains toward Altacima. The road was rough enough that even 4-wheel drive vehicles had to navigate carefully, but for someone on foot who knew the way, it was manageable. What Garcia didn't account for was how the alcohol from the party might affect his judgment and balance on the treacherous mountain path. As he walked through the darkness, relying on his familiarity with the route, he approached a section of road that curved sharply near the junction for Rancho Cielo. This particular curve was deceptive, and the road surface was uneven from years of weather and minimal maintenance. Just a few feet from where the road made its turn, hidden in the darkness and nearly invisible even in daylight, was a natural pit. The opening was approximately 8 feet, 2.4 meters in diameter, a seemingly modest entrance that belied the terrifying depth below. The pit dropped vertically for 150 feet, 45 meters, into the limestone bedrock, a natural shaft carved by water over geological time. As Garcia navigated the curve, his impaired judgment and the darkness combined with deadly effect. Instead of following the road around the bend, he strayed from the path. Perhaps he was disoriented by the alcohol, or maybe he simply misjudged the curve in the poor light. Whatever the exact cause, Garcia stepped directly into the pit opening. The fall through 150 feet, 45 meters of darkness was catastrophic. Garcia plummeted through the shaft, sustaining massive injuries when he struck the bottom. Now, he lay trapped in the depths of the underground chamber, severely wounded and unable to call for help. The remote location and the pit's depth meant his cries, if any, would never reach the surface. Above ground, the night continued peacefully. The forest sounds hid any noise from the accident, and the pit's remote location meant that no one witnessed Garcia's fall. The disturbed earth around the pit's rim was the only evidence of the tragedy, small scrapes and displaced soil that would later provide crucial clues to searchers. When Garcia failed to return home as expected, his family initially waited with patience. But as Sunday stretched into Monday without any word, concern grew into genuine worry. The search began with family members and friends retracing Garcia's expected route along the old mountain road. They called his name through the forest, checked with neighbors, and explored every turnoff and trail where he might have taken shelter or become lost. The rough terrain made searching difficult, with thick vegetation and uneven ground hiding potential clues. For several days, the search parties found nothing. No signs of Garcia, no indication of where he might have gone or what might have happened to him. The mountains seemed to have swallowed him completely, leaving behind only questions and growing desperation among his loved ones. The breakthrough came when searchers reached the area near the Rancho Cielo Junction, about 200 yards from the main turnoff. The pit was not immediately obvious, but careful examination of the area revealed the disturbed ground around its rim. The scrapes in the earth and displaced vegetation suggested that someone or something had fallen into the opening. However, the pit's depth made it impossible for the family searchers to see the bottom, even with flashlights. The shaft disappeared into complete darkness, and calling down into the void produced no response. The searchers faced a terrible dilemma. They suspected Garcia might be in the pit, but they lacked the equipment and expertise needed to safely explore such a dangerous vertical cave. Garcia's brother made the decision to contact John Musquiz, a well-known cave rescuer from Mante, who had extensive experience in cave rescue operations. Musquiz had spent decades exploring the underground systems of Tamaulipas and was respected throughout the regional caving community for his technical skills and dedication to safety. When Musquiz received the call for help, he immediately understood the gravity of the situation. Cave rescues were always challenging, but recovering someone from a 150-foot pit required careful planning, specialized equipment, and experienced team members. He contacted several fellow cave explorers and arranged to meet at the site, bringing the ropes, harnesses, lights, and technical gear necessary for a deep pit rescue. The rescue team arrived at the location accompanied by members of the local fire department, who provided additional support and coordination. The pit site was exactly as described, a deceptively simple opening in the ground, positioned dangerously close to the rough mountain road where Garcia had been walking. Musquiz and his team began the methodical process of rigging their descent system. They secured ropes to reliable anchor points, checked every piece of equipment multiple times, and established communication protocols for the dangerous descent. In cave rescue operations, safety was paramount. Hasty actions could easily create additional victims rather than helping the original casualty. The descent into the pit revealed the tragic outcome that everyone had feared. Garcia's body was immediately visible at the bottom of the shaft. The severe injuries from the 150-foot, 45-meter fall had proven fatal, and it was clear that Garcia had not survived long after the impact. The recovery operation required the same careful technical approach as the initial descent. Muzquiz and his team worked methodically to bring Garcia's body to the surface, a process that took several hours and demanded precise coordination between team members at the bottom and top of the pit. The incident report filed by Muzquiz several days later documented the technical details of the rescue operation, while also noting the tragic circumstances that had led to Garcia's death. The combination of alcohol impairment, darkness, and the pit's proximity to the road had created a perfect storm of deadly conditions. The pit near Rancho Cielo remained as it had for centuries, a natural feature of the landscape that would continue to pose risks to unwary travelers. But for those who knew the story of Cornelio Garcia, it would forever serve as a reminder of how quickly the mountains could turn from familiar friend to deadly trap.